On our 25th wedding anniversary night, as warm golden lights reflected off wine glasses and the music filled the room, my husband stepped onto the stage with a faint smile. He pointed at my face and said, "2 years is enough. I want someone younger, and you should move out of this condo tomorrow." The entire ballroom fell silent. I remained seated, clutching my glass so tightly that my nails cut into my skin, blood seeping into the white lace. He forgot that the condo was my wedding gift from my parents, and I had never let anyone take it from me. As Martin bent down to sign the divorce papers amid the whispers, I stood up, took the microphone, and spoke with a voice that was trembling but steady. "Thank you for the anniversary gift, but you're not the only one with plans tonight." His eyes froze when I revealed a silver hair clip hidden inside my hand. It was a secret that could change everything for him. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave adds to this journey, and if this story has touched you, please remember to click like so it can reach more people. I still remember that morning clearly. Everything seemed just a little off. Martin woke up earlier than usual. He arranged some roses in a vase, poured me a cup of coffee, and set it down gently, as if he were the perfect husband. "Good morning, Kathy," he said with an awkward, forced smile that made me want to ask outright, "What are you hiding from me?" The cologne he wore that day wasn't his usual scent. Not the woody aroma he had used for 10 years, but something sweet and sharp, the kind women in their 30s often wear. When he went to shower, I caught a glimpse of his phone lighting up. A single message, "Called G at 11 a.m." Just those few words, but they made my heart turn cold. I asked casually, as if I wasn't concerned, "Who's G?" Martin hesitated. His eyes flicked past me and then looked away, but his smile quickly returned. "Oh, Grayson, a partner in Seattle. He wants to discuss a new project. But I have known Martin for more than 25 years. I know every habit, every small tell. I noticed the twitch of his left eyelid, a familiar sign that he was lying. I chose not to ask further. Instead, I offered a quiet smile and turned away, hiding my clenched fist. Around midday, Lorraine, my mother-in-law, arrived, as she often did. She appeared wearing a fur coat, a triple strand of pearls, and heavy Chanel perfume. "Catherine, dear," she sang softly, "I just stopped by to see how you're getting the party ready." I invited her to sit down, poured her some tea, and made an effort to stay polite. She took a sip, her eyes scanning the living room as if assessing the value of each item. "This condo is still lovely, isn't it?" she asked, her tone light. "Your parents really knew how to choose a wedding gift." I smiled and replied, "Yes, they always wanted me to have a safe place to come home to." She gave a slight, thin smile. "Safe. In this life, nothing is truly yours without proof, no matter what else you may have. Speaking of which, do you still have the title to the Capitol Hill condo?" I paused and met her gaze directly. "Same place as always, mother in the safe." "Ah, good. You know, Martin is now 55 and he doesn't have any grandchildren yet, which is a bit sad. I think if you and Martin don't have children, perhaps you should consider writing a will, leaving everything to my nephews, just in case." I smiled, but inside I felt a cold chill. "Your nephews?" "Yes, they are very good boys. I am only thinking ahead, dear." When Lorraine left, her perfume still lingering in the air, I sat stunned for a long time. Everything started to come together like a dark, confusing puzzle. Martin's call at 3 a.m., that mysterious appointment with G, my mother-in-law, asking about the house papers. Someone was carefully making plans, and I was the intended target. That evening, I opened Martin's laptop. He had changed the old password, our wedding date 070398. No luck. I tried reversing it, 89307 and managed to get in. When I saw the browser history, my chest tightened. A series of searches filled my mind. How to retain the house during a divorce, legal strategies for dividing assets, ways to make my wife sign a waiver. I sat there, frozen in shock. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was planning to erase me completely. Around 8 in the evening, the phone rang. It was Paige, my college best friend. "Kathy, I have to tell you this. I just saw Martin at City Center, DC with a blonde. They were picking out engagement rings." I went silent, my hands growing numb. I asked what did she look like? "About 30. Pretty in a fake way, big curls, fur coat. She was laughing, clinging to his arm. Kathy, are you okay? I'm fine, I replied softly. I just need more time. That night I didn't sleep. I sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall on our quiet Capitol Hill street. More than 25 years, more than half of my life had passed. From the spirited young woman I once was to a 55-year-old with lines at my eyes, still loyal, still holding onto the hope of marriage. And now, the man I trusted most was figuring out how to take the home my parents left me. I knew Martin wouldn't stay quiet. He loves to create a scene. He would pick a public event where he could embarrass me in front of everyone. He wanted to make me seem small and helpless. And there was no better place than our 25th anniversary celebration, filled with friends, colleagues, and family. That was the very event I, the naive wife, had spent a whole month preparing for. I offered a faint smile. Fine, I told myself. If you want drama, I'll give you drama. But this time, I'm writing the script. The next morning, I began getting ready, not with dresses or makeup plans. I reopened Martin's laptop, selected the emails, messages, and browsing history related to the divorce, and copied them onto a small USB drive. I tucked it into the silver hair clip I always wear, a gift from my mother, now turned into a weapon for my comeback. I also started seeking legal support. I thought of Brianna Patel, a college friend who is now a family lawyer in Georgetown. I didn't tell her everything. I just sent one brief message. Bree, I need to talk to you about someone trying to take my home. I put my phone down and looked up at the mirror. The woman looking back with silver streaks and brown hair, eyes full of determination, was no longer the gentle Catherine from 25 years ago. I understood that if I wanted to hold on to everything, I had to fight back. When Martin came home, he kissed my cheek as if nothing had changed. Wear the blue dress tonight, Kathy. We're going to have a night to remember, he said in a syrupy voice that nearly made me laugh. I responded softly, yes, a night to remember. That evening, I rested my hand on my purse, feeling the USB hidden in the hair clip still secure. Inside it, there were copies of the condo documents, screenshots, bank statements, and a letter I had not yet sent to Brianna. When I entered the ballroom of the Willard Hotel, the golden lights reflected off crystal glasses and the sound of laughter filled the air. Everyone believed it was a celebration of enduring love, but I knew that tonight was a battle. I adjusted my hair clip, took a deep breath, and smiled as I stepped into the light. No one in that room, not even Martin, knew that the woman they saw as the victim was about to turn the situation around. And with that, the game started. I didn't sleep that night. After the anniversary party, Martin acted as if nothing had happened. He showered, played jazz music, poured himself a glass of wine, and toasted to the next 25 years, as if the public shame had never taken place. But I knew that smile was just a cover for a colder plan. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the bedroom door open faintly. I held my breath, stayed very still, and pretended to be asleep. The light from the hallway cast shadows across Martin's face as he quietly slipped out. I heard his quiet, urgent whisper as he moved away from the bedroom. I eased closer to the door so I could listen. We have to stick to the plan, Mom, he said softly but clearly. She won't suspect a thing. Lorraine's voice came through the line, faint but unmistakable. Everything must look natural. After the party, you get her to sign the papers. Don't let your guard down, Martin. The quieter she remains, the easier the task will be. I heard him respond briefly. I know. Then he returned and lay down as if he had never left. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling my heart pounding. It felt like a scene from a play. They were acting out my own life. The next morning, Martin left early, saying he had a meeting with partners. He gave a light, cold kiss on my forehead before leaving. When the door clicked shut behind him, the condo fell silent. I sat up, suspicion rising inside me like a swell. His phone was on the dining table. The screen was dark, but after a few moments, a notification appeared. Voicemail. I hadn't planned to listen, but my hands moved instinctively before my mind could stop them. I pressed the speaker button. A man's voice sounded steady and direct. Dee, I already spoke with Mrs. Lorraine. Everything can be arranged. The important thing is that she signs the waiver of ownership. After that, the condo will be yours. G. Hale, G. Hale. I instantly recognized the voice, the G in Martin's contacts. The one he called Grayson, a Seattle partner, not a partner, a divorce lawyer. It felt like someone had slapped me hard across the face. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. 6-digit passcode. I tried our wedding date, wrong. His birthday, wrong. Then a memory flashed. When Paige told me the girl named Tessa had chosen rings with Martin, she mentioned Tessa's birthday is on March 8th, International Women's Day. I entered 0308 plus Martin's birth year, 030865. The phone unlocked. I took a deep breath and started reading. The first message appeared like a cold knife. Tessa, after the anniversary, we're moving into that condo, right? I already picked the curtain color. Martin, of course, it'll all be ours. My mom has the lawyer taken care of. She suspects nothing. I scrolled through message after message filled with hints and silent contempt. Don't forget the mic. I want to see her face when you say it. She still thinks you love her? Poor thing. They were planning to humiliate me in front of everyone so I would give up my rights, using shame, pride, and the crowd against me. I didn't cry. I sat up straight, opened my settings, uploaded all the messages, photos, and call logs to my personal iCloud, then copied another set to the USB hidden inside the silver hair clip. Before turning off the phone, I replayed Lorraine's short recording. As long as she signed, everything would be okay. I wanted to see the transfer paper before Monday. Transfer papers. I repeated the word silently, feeling a cold wave run through me. They didn't just want the condo, they wanted to erase my identity. I needed help, and I knew there was only one person I could trust. Brianna Patel, my college classmate, now the respected family lawyer in DC, was the only option. I dialed her number. Catherine, oh my God, how long has it been? You sound different. What's going on? I kept my voice steady. Bree, I need to see you as soon as possible. Can we meet for lunch today? Not lunch, but 4 p.m. works. My office is still on Massachusetts Avenue. Thanks, Bree. And please don't tell anyone about this call. Her voice softened. Catherine, you're making me worried, but I'll keep it to myself. I hung up and pressed my forehead into my hand. It finally felt like I had admitted to myself that this marriage was truly over. At Brianna's office, I still appeared like any ordinary woman, wearing a beige coat, carrying a neat purse, with no makeup on. But inside, I was a storm of emotions. Her office faced a peaceful park, clean and cozy. Brianna came out and hugged me close. You look the same, Kathy, she said, studying my eyes. But I can tell you're hiding something, aren't you? I sat down, looked around, and started speaking. Every detail, the midnight call, the G. Hale voicemail, Tessa's birthday, the condo, came pouring out. She listened quietly without interruption. Sometimes she nodded, other times she took notes. When I finished, Brianna let out a long breath. It sounds like a scene from a movie, but sadly, I've known this story all too well. You're facing someone who has received coaching. G. Hale is well known as a divorce lawyer with a tough reputation. And Lorraine, your mother in law, is probably the mastermind behind this scheme. I chose to remain quiet. Now listen carefully, Brianna continued. First, do not let them realize that you know. Pretend everything is normal. They only have control if you lose your composure. I nodded in understanding. Second, start gathering evidence. It's good that you already have backup messages. If possible, record conversations. The more recordings, the better. I stored each word in my mind. Third, she spoke slowly. Keep your finances separate. Do you have your own bank account? I will open one today. Do it now. And make sure there are no traces they can find. Brianna leaned back, thinking deeply. Catherine, I need to ask about the Capitol Hill condo. Where did the initial money originate? My parents, I replied immediately. They purchased it as a wedding gift. My name was on the deed first and Martin's was did later. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. Do you have a copy of the certificate? Yes, I do. At home. Perfect. If we can prove it was bought before marriage, they won't be able to claim it. It was as if a door had opened, letting in a glimmer of hope. However, we will need a lawyer who specializes in marital property to be certain. Brianna asked, do you remember who took care of the paperwork back then? I closed my eyes to try to recall. The day we signed for the condo, there was a silver-haired man with round glasses and a calm voice. Mr. Whitman, I said suddenly. He was the one who handled everything. His office is on M Street. Perfect. Brianna said, go see him right away. If he still has the file, that's your legal protection. I nodded and quickly wrote down the address. Before I left, Brianna gently took my hand. Catherine, listen to me. Don't let them make you a victim. They're used to you being quiet and gentle. Now show them a different side, the one with reason, proof, and the law on your side. I smiled softly, but inside I felt a spark of determination. On the way home, the sky over DCC was dull. Dry leaves floated along the sidewalk. I arrived at a familiar cafe and quickly made a short to-do list. First, open a separate account. Second, call Mr. Whitman. Third, print copies of the house papers. Fourth, back up more data onto a USB stick. Fifth, send Brianna the financial summary. I closed my notebook and gazed out the window. The rain had started light but was steady. Through the glass, I saw my reflection. There were no more traces of fear in my eyes, only clarity and calm. They believed I would break, but they didn't realize that the woman they were about to betray was the same woman who had learned to rise above betrayal. I started the car, signaled left, and headed toward M Street, where I would see Mr. Whitman again, and where my first legal shield would begin to form. The following morning, I woke earlier than usual. Autumn in DC was cold and damp, with a white haze over the rooftops across the street. I made some coffee, put on a knit coat, and left quietly while Martin was still asleep. He said he had an important meeting tonight and would be home late. I simply nodded and stepped out. Any words now could cut in two ways. I drove to Mr. Whitman's office on M Street, the old red brick building that was worn but still sturdy, much like the man I was about to see. He had helped me buy my condo 25 years ago. I just hoped he still kept the records. When I entered, the receptionist recognized my name and smiled. Mr. Whitman is still upstairs on the third floor. Miss Catherine, he'll be pleased to see you. 3 flights of creaking wooden stairs brought me up. The office door was slightly open, and the smell of old paper and oak wood drifted out. Catherine Miller, my goodness, how many years has it been? Mr. Whitman's voice was warm and sincere, just as I remembered. His hair was now almost all white, but he stood straight and his eyes remained sharp. I shook his hand and kept my voice even. It's been a while, Mr. Whitman. I need your help with a small matter, actually a very important one. Please go on. He chuckled and motioned for me to sit. I remember you and Martin. You chose the condo in Capitol Hill, right? Yes. I nodded. But now I need to confirm the original funding when we bought it. He frowned slightly, unlocked an old file cabinet. The thick folders were neatly arranged, each drawer labeled by year in a slanted handwriting. He flipped through a few and stopped. Here we are. July 1999, Catherine Miller wire transfer directly from First Federal Bank account holders Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I held my breath. Is that exact, sir? He pushed his glasses up, double-checked, and nodded. No mistake. The purchase funds came from your parents' account, and on the first deed, only Catherine Miller appears. 2 months after the marriage, I received a request to add Martin Cole as a second co-owner, not a purchaser. I went quiet for a few seconds. That single detail felt like a beam of light cutting through heavy clouds. What does that mean? If I hesitated, if there's a divorce, he finished for me. It means the condo is regarded as your premarital property. Martin can only claim any increase in value if he can demonstrate he made significant investments in major structural improvements, such as a new roof or structural upgrades. If the enhancements were only cosmetic, he has no claim. I smiled in a way I hadn't in years. Do you still have the original documents? Of course. I'll print you a stamped copy. Come back tomorrow afternoon, and I'll have it ready. I stood and shook his hand, feeling warmth return to my palm. Thank you, Mr. Whitman. You just saved me from a nightmare. He smiled kindly. Driving back, the rain started again. I turned on some music, but my thoughts kept racing. If the condo is proved to be premarital, Martin can't claim it, even with a team of lawyers. I held the wheel tightly and told myself, this is the first shield. Before heading home, I stopped at the bank. I requested to open a new account in only my name. I asked the banker to transfer my monthly salary and personal savings. The banker looked at me and offered a professional smile. Would you like your statements mailed to your home? No, I replied quickly. Just email them to my personal address. It was a small decision, but I knew it was the first step toward independence. When I arrived home, Martin was in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie. He turned and eyed me from head to toe. You should change your hairstyle, he said with a hint of boredom. Maybe visit a spa. You look tired. I placed my bag on the table and kept my tone steady. It was just a long day, that's all. Martin stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. That familiar touch now made my skin crawl. Catherine, you have to understand, we men still appreciate women who take care of themselves. You wouldn't want to be compared to women in their 30s, right? He spoke as if each word was a blade. I smiled, picked up the magazine he had tossed onto the table, and thought to myself, keep talking, Martin. The more the better. In my coat pocket, the tiny recorder had been running since before I stepped inside. Every word, his remarks about my appearance, and the comparisons to younger women, was captured clearly, word for word. He had no idea. When Martin left, I sat down, took out my phone, and saved the audio file to a private iCloud folder. I titled it Evidence Agents Dar 3, Verbal and Emotional Abuse. I also had messages and calls, now a voice recording, to give a complete picture. That evening, while I was preparing a simple meal, my phone pinged with a new email from the Willard Hotel. The subject was event confirmation, Cole anniversary. I opened it and nearly gasped. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Cole, we have confirmed your booking for 100 guests in the grand ballroom, including dinner, wine, and a live band. The total cost is $47,000. The full payment has been made from the joint account ending in $4,470. I leaned back in my chair. $47,000. The savings I had accumulated over 2 years were spent not to honor our marriage, but to humiliate me instead. I took a deep breath, picked up an old brown leather notebook, my journal of facts, and began to write. I titled it Battle List, under headings like assets, evidence, witnesses. One asset was a Capitol Hill condo, confirming a premarital source. Whitman's personal account at First Federal was open today. USB drives and iCloud stored evidence. There were 2 recordings of calls between Martin and Lorraine. Martin sent a Tessa message about a $47,000 event email from the joint account. There were insults and personal insults conveyed. Tonight's recording included 3 witnesses: Brianna Patel, an attorney who could verify a staged divorce plan, Mr. Whitman, who originally prepared the condo file, and Paige, my friend, who saw Martin with Tessa. I underlined the last line and added, "Don't cry in front of the crowd, only the truth." I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and sat quietly in the dark. Outside, rain tapped softly on the awning. I heard each drop like a countdown. Martin believed I was fragile, that I would shiver at the thought of being removed from my home. He had no idea I already possessed a legal shield, solid evidence, and an unbreakable determination. When lightning lit up the sky outside, I saw my reflection in the glass. My eyes were no longer those of a desperate wife. They had become eyes of a woman prepared to fight back. On the Monday morning, as I reached out to pick up the paper, I noticed a thick envelope stamped in deep red with the seal of Notariat Zurich, a Swiss notary office. I hesitated. I didn't recognize anyone there. I opened it, and 3 documents slipped onto the table. The first line made me pause for a few moments, concerning the inheritance of Mrs. Margaret Adler, a Swiss citizen living in Zurich. Aunt Margaret was my maternal great-aunt, single, fond of travel, hardly in touch, but always sending a Christmas card. She used to joke that if I didn't give up on marriage, I should at least keep an escape route. I had laughed back then. Now her words echoed in my mind like a prediction. I read each line carefully. Condo in Zurich, Bonhoefstrasse 42, valued at 100,000 CHF, Credit Suisse bank account with 890,000 CHF, vacation condo in Miami Beach, Florida, worth 300,000 USD. The total was over $3 million, and I am the sole heir. I let the paper slip from my hands and sat quietly. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting small dancing spots across my hands. $3 million, enough that I would never have to submit to anyone again, not even Martin. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't just luck. This was a second chance, arriving just when I needed it most. I picked up the phone and called Brianna immediately, my voice still trembling. Brianna, I just received an inheritance notice from Aunt Margaret. She passed away. She left me property, a condo in Zurich, one in Miami, and a bank account. On the other end, Brianna was silent for a few moments. What did you say? Zurich, Miami? Yeah, about $3 million in total. Catherine, she blurted, do you understand? This is the ideal escape plan. But the most important thing is not to tell anyone. I intend to keep it all secret. Good. You need to open a personal account immediately to receive the funds. Do not let any transactions be made through the joint account. Martin must not find out. I have written down every word. Bree, I said slowly, I believe this will be plan B. If they come for me from my home, I will go straight to Miami. Start fresh. Exactly, Brianna replied. You will have a condo, some money, and your independence. But first, to protect ourselves legally, I will send a preservation notice to the bank to prevent them from touching the joint funds until the court makes a decision. She promised to take care of that on the same day. I breathed a sigh of relief, lighter than I had felt in weeks. Finally, I had something steady beneath my feet. That afternoon, I went to First Federal to open a personal account in the multiple currencies. The face of the bank manager was familiar, a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair, professional yet warm-eyed. I expressed my desire to open a personal account in US dollars and CHF, speaking in a calm, steady voice. You want a completely private personal account? Fully private. I nodded, feeling nervous. After she finished printing out the forms, I thanked her and asked, if I receive a wire transfer from Switzerland, what steps do I need to take? Just give this SWIFT code and IBAN information. The system will automatically convert the currency, and only you will have access. I folded the papers and tucked them into my bag. A small step, but I knew I was laying the foundation of my independence. The next day, I went to the Swiss Consulate General in Washington, D.C., to complete the inheritance paperwork. An older official with a tall stature and silver-rimmed glasses looked over the documents, checked my ID, then spoke softly. Mrs. Adler was very thorough and careful. The inheritance file had been prepared in 2015. She also wrote to my niece, Catherine Miller, who reminds me of my younger self. May she always stand firm and never let anyone silence her. I held onto the edge of the desk, feeling a strange ache in my heart from a message from someone who was no longer alive. After just over an hour, he handed me a stamped file. All Swiss assets will be transferred after kinship is confirmed. The Miami Beach condo will be available immediately. You may start using that property today, he said. My condolences and congratulations as well. I expressed my thanks, my voice trembling. As I stepped outside, beams of sunlight broke through the leaves and cast gentle patches of light across my shoulder. A chilly breeze from the Petuac brought a quiet sense of calm. From that moment, I realized I was no longer trapped. That evening, I opened my laptop and logged into the new account. The balance showed zero, but in a few days, when the Zurich funds arrived, everything would change. An unexpected sense of peace settled over me. I placed the new documents into my private lockbox, the metal one only I have a key to. I positioned it close to the file cabinet and then opened the household safe. We had always shared that safe. Martin often boasted to friends that my wife and I have nothing to hide. I chuckled softly when I remembered that. Tonight, I installed a biometric fingerprint lock for my eyes only. If Martin attempts to open it, the system will lock for 10 minutes and trigger an alert. I stored the most valuable items inside: copies of the Capitol Hill condo documents, inheritance files from Zurich and Miami, an email confirming a $47,000 event, and a backup USB from the hair clip were carefully placed inside. As I closed the door, it felt as though an invisible fortress had been built around me. Brianna texted around midnight. A preservation notice had been sent to First Federal. They would monitor any suspicious activity on the joint account. I replied, get some rest. Thank you. Tomorrow, I will write a memo to my boss just in case Martin causes trouble. Victor Lang, my CFO at work, is strict but fair. I trust that if things go wrong, he will support me as long as I can show the truth. I sat down at my desk and drafted a 2-page memo, straightforward and clear. I, Catherine Miller, am currently experiencing a serious marital crisis. There is a chance that my husband, Martin Cole, may attempt to spread false information or defame me to harm my professional reputation. I confirm that I will not let personal issues interfere with my work and will uphold ethical standards. However, I ask the company to be aware of the situation to prevent any misunderstandings. I signed the document, placed the original in my file folder, and set it aside for Victor in the morning. That night, I could not find sleep. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, like a distant heartbeat. I stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the city lights stretching out before me. The evening rain had cleared the sky, leaving it sparkling. Washington shimmered under a damp, hazy veil. I closed my eyes and imagined myself in a new Miami condo, windows facing the sea, waves rolling in, salty air tinged with wild orange blossoms. No one there would mention age wrinkles or women in their 30s. There I would simply be myself, free and at peace. But I also understood that to reach that moment, I needed to finish the play Martin was about to stage. He thought I would break down when publicly shamed. He didn't realize I had already prepared a second act, the reversal. I took up my notebook and added the final line labeled counter plan, the reversal speech for the party. Stay calm, no tears. Speak little, hit hard. Present lawful proof, deed, inheritance, deceit, evidence. And by reminding myself that sometimes even 25 years isn't enough for someone to learn honesty. I closed the notebook. The night grew quiet, with only the wind slipping softly through the doorframe. I sat in the dark, listening as my heart began to beat steadily again, slow and sure, like a woman who had regained control of her life. I told myself, Martin, you can set the stage, hire the band, rehearse your lines, but I will decide how the story will end. 2 days before the party, I chose to go to the Willard Hotel, the very stage Martin had picked for the conclusion of our marriage. I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed to understand exactly where he would act, who would be present, and how it would happen. The Willard, right in the middle of Washington, D.C., still looked as magnificent as a palace. Its gilded ceilings, marble accents, and the lobby filled with sparkling crystal chandeliers made it feel like a place of historic speeches. Perhaps Martin liked the idea of making his final statement in such a prestigious setting. Standing in the lobby, I pretended to be a curious guest, exploring the venue for a friend's anniversary celebration. I paused, silently observing. The front desk clerk smiled warmly and guided me to the grand ballroom. The doors swung open, and a blend of the scent of polished wood, fresh wine, and white roses filled the air. In the middle of the spacious room stood a small stage, with a microphone hanging above it bearing the Willard logo. I moved slowly through the room, taking in every detail: the position of the microphone, the paths of the cameras, the angles of the lights. Everything pointed toward the center where Martin would stand. I closed my eyes and visualized it. Hundreds of people sitting around tables, applause ringing out, the sound of silverware. I imagined Martin smiling, lifting the microphone and saying, 2 years is enough. I would lift my head, stand up, and change the situation right then and there. Opening my eyes, I looked up at the ceiling-mounted audio system. Does this microphone cover the whole room? I asked. The clerk smiled and nodded. Yes, ma'am. Our audio is checked daily. The central microphone picks up sound clearly all the way to the back. I nodded with satisfaction. As I turned to leave the grand ballroom, a voice called out from behind. Catherine. I turned around. Tessa, the young woman Paige mentioned, was standing nearby in a pale yellow dress with her phone pressed to her ear. She was almost 20 years younger than I was, carefully made up, but her eyes held a nervous sparkle. She offered a half smile, tilted her head slightly. Oh, I'm talking to the event manager. He mentioned there's a big celebration scheduled this week for a couple who own a luxurious condo on Capitol Hill. Guess what? They're hosting it right here. Perhaps you've heard about it. I kept my expression neutral and responded politely. Washington really is a small city. Tell your friend good luck. Tessa gave a soft laugh and glanced back down at her phone. That condo will soon have a new owner. Sometimes a woman needs to recognize when it's time to let go. I looked her directly in the eyes, still smiling. A wise woman knows when to remain silent so she can think and act wisely. She hesitated for a moment, then managed a stiff smile and kept pretending she was still talking. I turned and walked away, my heart beat even and unhurried. By then, I no longer felt anger, only a sense of pity. I approached the events desk using the friend's celebration line to request a copy of the cost sheet and seating chart. I wanted to get a clear idea of how to organize seating for 100 guests. The manager, a tan skinned woman with a name tag that read Monique, happily handed me a printed copy. I leaned over it and my eyes stopped at the last line. There, in bold, was the overflow table reserved for special guest Grayson Hale, Esquire. I almost chuckled. Grayson Hale, divorce lawyer, not only supporting Martin, but also listed as a guest of honor. It struck me as quite ironic that they planned to announce a divorce in front of everyone and had invited the lawyer to witness it. I took Monique's pen and circled that line on my copy. Thank you, I said. Everything looks perfect. I'll make the booking soon. Happy to help, ma'am, she replied. I stepped outside the hotel, the paper trembling slightly in the wind. Later that afternoon, I sat in a cafe across the street, reviewing all the details I had collected. The seating chart, guest list, and microphone placement. I opened notes on my phone and jotted down Martin is speaking dead center in the light box. Tess is at the front right table. Lorraine is at table 3 near the stage. Hale overflow table is at the back exit to the left of the desk. I closed the notebook and took a sip of cold coffee. Everything was in place. Now I just had to step onto the board. When I arrived home, dusk had settled. Martin was still not back. Instead, I found Lorraine in the living room, sitting with her legs crossed and holding a teacup. The scene reminded me of a courtroom where she had assumed the role of judge. "Oh, Catherine," she said softly, her tone almost unsettling in its sweetness, "I brought this for you." It was a voucher for a free consultation from Hale and Partners. They are very well known. I think you should see them soon, before anything unexpected occurs. I took the envelope and noticed the deep blue logo. Hale and Partners, specialists in family law, printed very sharply. I gave a gentle smile. Thank you, Mother. I'll think about it. Lorraine put down her cup and studied me carefully. In marriage, the one who moves more slowly always ends up losing. I softly said these words, my eyes fixed on hers. That's why I always prepare in advance. She raised an eyebrow, not quite understanding what I meant. When she left, I took out my phone, captured a photo of the Hale and Partners voucher, and saved it to a folder labeled Flip File. Martin arrived home around midnight, excited as if he'd just struck gold. "Kathy, you're going to love this," he said, removing his coat and opening his laptop to show me a draft of his speech. "I've been working on it all week. That night, everyone will see how things are meant to end. Don't worry, I'll make it look good for both of us. I've learned that kind words can sometimes be the sharpest knives. Have you ever heard something that sounded kind but deeply hurt you? If so, share a memory or feeling in the comments. Someone else might relate to your story." I looked at the screen. The title read, "A New Chapter of Freedom." I kept my anger under control and forced a smile. "Great, Martin. I've always appreciated your way with words." He didn't realize I meant something else entirely. He laughed, gave me a quick half hug, and then went upstairs. I stayed in the living room, the glow from my laptop reflecting on the window. My silhouette appeared small but firm. He thought the knife was in his hand, but the real weapon was in mine. The next morning, I gathered all the important documents into a brown leather envelope. Mr. Whitman's confirmation of the condo's funding source, transfer paper from Zurich and Miami, bank statements, and notarized letters. I sealed it up, tucked it into my bag, and did a final check. In the mirror, I saw a woman who was 55 years old with a tidy bun, bright eyes, and squared shoulders. Not someone afraid, but someone prepared for action. Before heading out, I opened a drawer and took an old backup phone. I turned it on, set it to record video, and configured it to upload automatically to the cloud. I planned to wear it all night, hidden under a light coat. I wasn't sure how the party would turn out, but I understood this much. Everything would be recorded, every word, every glance, every moment Martin was digging his own grave. I stood in the hallway, catching the faint scent of lavender from my scarf, my mother's favorite. I tightened my hold on the bag and told myself, I won't cry, Mom. I will speak honestly. Then I stepped outside, leaving the quiet condo behind, prepared for the biggest challenge of my life, the fight known as the Willard. That evening, the Willard shone brightly like a large jewelry box in downtown Washington, D.C. As I exited the car, the jazz band in the lobby played Moon River, the same tune Martin once claimed he was tired of because it was old. I walked slowly beneath the crystal fixtures, dressed in a navy outfit that fit neatly, my hair pinned back, nothing flashy or showy, just enough to ensure I wouldn't be overlooked. The server bowed slightly and greeted me. Good evening, Mrs. Cole. Your husband is welcoming guests in the grand ballroom. Thank you, I said with a gentle smile. My voice stayed calm and steady, even though my heart was pounding inside, feeling like it might burst out of my chest. The ballroom sparkled under the glow of the chandeliers. More than 100 guests filled the room. There were evening gowns, tuxedos, glasses of champagne, polite chuckles, and an orchestra playing their usual pretend at a lively pace. At the main table, Martin was busy shaking hands with my boss, Victor Lang, and several colleagues from the finance department. I saw Brianna, my lawyer friend, sitting near the back, giving me the faintest nod. We're in a good place. Lorraine, dressed in a black gown with silver embroidery, made her way around the tables, bragging about her son and how he was on the right track in life. A successful man needs someone who can keep up with him, not just stand quietly by his side. I almost chuckled at her words. She spoke as if I was an old item ready to be discarded. Suddenly, the MC's voice abruptly cut through the air like a sharp blade. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Mr. Martin Cole. The man of the night was celebrating 25 years of marriage. Applause filled the room, and glasses clinked happily. I took a deep breath, looking around and memorizing the faces in the crowd. Tessa sat at the front table, smiling a little too brightly. The microphone in the center was waiting. Martin stepped onto the stage, adjusted his tie, and flashed a confident smile. I knew that smile well. It was for the audience, not for his wife. Thank you, everyone, he began, sounding sure of himself. 2 years? That's a long time, and sometimes it feels even longer. Polite chuckles passed through the crowd. A few people raised their glasses in support. I used to think marriage was forever, Martin said next. But I've realized that sometimes what we call love is just a youthful mistake. I heard quick breaths nearby and a few uneasy whispers. Despite this, Martin kept smiling, calm as if he was giving a speech at a conference. Catherine and I have been through a lot together, but time changes everything. People change. I've grown, he continued. And now I need someone who truly understands me, someone with more energy. I can't be with someone dull, timid, or afraid of change. I saw Lorraine lift her head and nod with pride. Tessa bit her lip, pretending to feel moved. My colleagues, the people who once held me in respect, stared at me with wide, shocked eyes. Martin held his head high. That's why I want to make this known publicly in front of those who matter most. Catherine and I will part ways peacefully. I suggest we share our assets fairly. The Capitol Hill condo should go to whoever can make better use of it, and I believe I should be the one to continue living there. She needs a new beginning. A gentle murmur spread throughout the room. Someone commented, fair enough. Another said, right here. That's outrageous. I stayed seated, noticing only that the glass of champagne in my hand felt a bit cold. My boss, Victor Lang, frowned and looked toward Martin, but Martin kept speaking with a smug smile. This isn't the end, it's freedom for both of us. I hope you will bless us and wish Catherine success in finding what she truly deserves. A soft round of applause followed. I understood that most of the comments came from people who didn't know what else to say. I placed my glass on the table. The tap against the tray made a dull sound. I stood up slowly and moved toward the stage. My long dress brushed against the marble floor. All eyes were on me. Excuse me, I said softly but clearly. I think I should say a few words as well. Martin turned, a flicker of worry in his eyes. Catherine, that's not necessary, he whispered, trying to smile. Don't cause a scene. I raised my hand gently but firmly. You've spoken for 10 minutes. I only need 3. The MC hesitated, glanced at Martin, then looked back at me. I gave a small smile, stepped forward, and asked for the microphone. A heavy silence settled over the room. The light shone on my face. I looked around at the people who once believed in our perfect family. Now, surprised and silent, I took a slow breath and began to speak, calm and careful. It's interesting to hear you talk about mistakes from your youth, Martin. But if anyone here thinks I didn't realize this was heading our way, you might be underestimating a woman who has spent 25 years living under the same roof with you. A few quiet whispers spread through the room. Martin tried to smile, step forward, reaching for the microphone. But I moved aside. You say you want to split the assets fairly? Fine. I paused and looked toward the corner. But before we start dividing anything, why not ask your lawyer, Mr. Grayson Hale, who is sitting right there, whether that condo actually belongs to you? People turned their heads. Grayson Hale, dressed in a gray suit, froze, the color fading from his face. Martin flinched. Catherine, what nonsense are you talking about? I pulled a brown envelope from my bag. The rustling of paper sounded clearly through the microphone. I won't waste anyone's time. This is a confirmation from Whitman Law, who managed the purchase of the condo in 1999. The funds were transferred directly from Mr. and Mrs. Miller's account, my parents, and the deed listed only my name before you were added 2 months after our wedding. By law, that is considered premarital property. You have no legal claim unless you can prove you paid for major improvements, and you never contributed a cent. The room felt as if all the air had been vacuumed out. A man at the front table let out an, "Oh my God," I continued. "Stay calm, and there's more. If you still want to discuss this, we need to divide the assets. I'm afraid I'll need a few more figures." I opened the envelope and pulled out 3 additional pages. This is an inheritance file from a Zurich notary, confirming I am the sole heir of my Aunt Margaret Adler, which includes a condo in Zurich, a bank account with over 800,000 Swiss francs, and a Miami Beach condo valued at more than $300,000. The total value exceeds $3 million. A hum of whispering spread through the room. Tessa turned pale. Lorraine's jaw dropped. Martin stood immobile, eyes wide with disbelief. I offered a small smile. "So, dear, I don't need a new beginning. I already have one. And the Capitol Hill condo, you can keep dreaming." Silence settled in, the background music ticking on like a tease. Martin forced a shaky smile, his voice trembling. "Catherine, did you arrange this in advance? Are you trying to embarrass me?" I tilted my head slightly, speaking softly. "No, Martin, you did that yourself. I just turned on the light." A wave of applause erupted from the back where Brianna was seated. Others joined in. Victor Lang stood up, arms crossed, and nodded. "Mrs. Cole," he announced loudly, "I believe you've just given us a lesson in courage and preparation." I responded with a grateful smile, communicating my appreciation silently. Martin lowered his head, his face flushed. Lorraine looked around, trying to say something, but no one paid attention. Tessa, the one who had bragged that a big condo would soon be hers, sat, head bowed, her glass trembling in her hand. I gently but firmly lowered the microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I apologize for the change in plans, but sometimes the truth needs to be spoken, even if it breaks the mood." I put the microphone down and turned away from the stage as the room grew louder with chatter. Behind me, Martin called out, his voice trembling. "Catherine, you can't." I paused, looked back with my gaze steady and emotionless. "You're right, Martin. 25 years is enough. But it's not me who's leaving the condo." I stepped out of the grand ballroom into the hallway, where scattered applause echoed around me, filling the space with a sense of pain and relief. The doors closed behind me, and I understood that the silver night had marked the end of a marriage, but also the start of a new, freer life. Standing beneath the Willard's sparkling chandeliers, microphone in hand, I felt hundreds of eyes on me. Surprised, curious, confused, and a wave of secondhand shame for a man who had just damaged his own reputation. The atmosphere felt heavy, like a solid pane of glass. Martin remained on the dais, his face slack and mouth hanging open, speechless. I caught Lorraine at table 3 whispering, "Oh, God," as if she had just watched her own dream shatter. Holding the microphone, my voice was steady, clear but firm. "You're right about one thing, Martin. 25 years is long enough. But unlike you, I didn't spend those years lying. I spent them discovering the truth and learning how to protect myself." A few gasps came from a corner. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the brown file I had prepared. My hands were steady. I unfolded the first page. The red seal was bold and prominent for everyone to see. "This is a confirmation from Whitman Law, the firm that handled the Capitol Hill condo purchase in 1999. According to the legal documents, the money came directly from my parents' account, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. The only name on the original title was Catherine Miller. That's me." 2 months after the wedding, the name Martin Cole was added as a second co-owner, not a buyer. By law, this condo is considered a premarital gift and cannot be divided in any divorce case. I lowered the page and looked directly at Martin. My voice was no longer gentle. "Now you can only lay claim to half of the old cabin in Virginia and half of the Lexus. Everything else is beyond your rights." A fresh wave of whispers swept through the room. Guests seated in the back leaned in to whisper among themselves. Someone even let out a disbelieving laugh. Martin stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Catherine, are you turning this gathering into a courtroom?" I tilted my head and offered a cool smile. "No, Martin, I'm simply stating the truth you've tried to conceal. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's not my problem." I placed the file on the table and pulled out the second stack. 3 weeks ago, I received an inheritance letter from Zurich. My Aunt Margaret Adler had passed away and left me everything. A Zurich condo valued at 1,200,000 Swiss francs, a Credit Suisse account with more than 800,000 francs, and a Miami Beach condo worth over $300,000. The total value exceeds $3 million, including more than $1 million already transferred to my personal account. Chairs creaked and everyone's eyes widened. A few women whispered, "She's wealthier than we thought." I looked around, my voice steady, so anyone here might think I'm not clinging to the Capitol Hill condo out of fear of losing my home. "Sorry to disappoint, but I have 2 places to live, and one of them faces the ocean." Tessa, the very young marketing assistant, stiffened, her face going pale, lips trembling as if she'd swallowed ice. Lorraine sat frozen, clutching her wine glass so tightly that it shattered, red liquid splashing onto her dress. I took a deep breath and said, "But that's not the best part. For 3 weeks, I've known your script. Every line you planned to say, every move you meant to make, every word you intended to use to humiliate me, I recorded it all." The room fell completely silent. I reached for the silver hair clip, slid it loose. One end popped open, revealing a neatly hidden USB drive. I plugged it into the DJ's laptop and nodded to the technician. The large screen behind me lit up, displaying text between Martin and Tessa. "After the anniversary, the condo is ours. You promised, Dee. I don't want to stay hidden forever." "Don't worry. Mom talked to Hale. She'll sign the waiver." A chorus of surprised murmurs followed. Then another clip appeared. An angry voicemail played over the speakers. Lorraine's voice was cold. "Dee, I've spoken with Mr. Hale. Everything's ready, as long as she signs the waiver. Let the party take care of the rest. She won't dare oppose it." A few guests gasped. Someone gasped, "Oh my!" Martin rushed toward the screen, yelling, "Turn it off! Who gave you this?" I raised my hand, calm and steady. "You spent $47,000 of our shared savings on this party. Not to celebrate love, but to humiliate me publicly. So, Martin, it's only right that everyone sees who the liar truly is." The room hushed, whispers spreading quickly. People looked at Martin as if he'd been caught in a lie. I spoke to the guests, colleagues, friends, and family who had watched our marriage from the very beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need your pity. What I need is the truth. I spent 25 years silent, believing that silence was what kept our happiness safe. Today, I understand that remaining silent in the face of dishonesty only gives power to those who are cruel. I am not here to seek sympathy. I am here to stand up for my legal rights, my moral rights, and my right to be treated with respect just like anyone else. A few scattered claps began to spread across the room, gradually growing louder. A handful of people stood up. I saw Brianna lift her head, her eyes shining with pride. In the back, Grayson Hale, the divorce lawyer, quickly rose from his seat and tried to slip away. The guest near the door blocked his way. Someone called out, "Is he Martin's lawyer?" "Exactly," I replied sharply. "And he's the one who devised the plan to force me to give up my property," I added. Hale lowered his head, stumbling over his words. "I'm only following my client's instructions," he said. A tall man who looked like one of Victor's guests stepped in front of him. "Men like you bring shame to the profession," he told Hale. Hale bowed his head and quietly slipped away, overshadowed by a wave of contempt. I turned my attention to Victor Lang. He was still standing at the front table, his expression stern as he looked directly at Martin. "Martin Cole," his voice rough as gravel. "I don't know what made you think you could do this in front of colleagues, clients, and leaders, but trust me, your position at the company will be reviewed." Martin's face went pale. Fists clenched tightly. "Victor, please let me explain." "No need." Victor interrupted him, turning to me. "Catherine, I'm sorry to see this happen, but I admire how calmly, clearly, and with your dignity still intact you handled it." I nodded in acknowledgement, my throat tight, not from tears, but from having my dignity restored. The room was quiet as I stepped away. Martin tried to stop me. "Catherine, don't go. We can talk." I paused and looked directly at him. "We've said enough, Martin. You lied, and I told the truth. Tonight, the truth has won," I said firmly. I placed the microphone on the table. The soft click sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. No one spoke. No, only the faint music and reflections of light danced on the shiny floor. I walked out with my back straight and my head held high. Voices rose behind me. Whispers, talking, someone clapping again. When the large door closed, I saw my reflection in the hallway mirror. Bright eyes, a calm face, a small smile. Tonight, I didn't just reclaim a condo, honor, or possessions. I reclaimed myself. The woman who once believed silence was safe and now understands the truth even late in the evening is the brightest light. As the grand ballroom doors swung shut behind me, inside, the explosion began. Noise spilled out through the gap, glass breaking, chatter rushing in. Someone shouted, "Get this on video. My goodness, is this real?" A voice quickly added, "She's right. I've seen him with that woman more than once." I stood in the marble corridor, the big mirror reflecting the warm golden light. Outside the glass, the storm was just beginning. Inside, chaos reigned. Phones up, gossip spreading, curses flying, bitter laughs stormed the gala like hail. Martin was stuck on stage, trembling with white lips as if he had been struck. He attempted to speak, but the microphone was still where I had left it. No one seemed interested in listening to him. I heard Tessa's voice rise in anger and frustration. "Say it, Martin. Tell them, show them she made it all up." Then there was a sharp sound. A glass was slammed onto the table, her voice trembling. She was losing control. "You promised to pay off the debt. You said you would get me the condo. You borrowed $20,000 from Chase, $15,000 from Wells Fargo, and then $8,000 from those quick credit lenders to keep me, didn't you?" The room erupted in chaos. One person exclaimed, "Oh my God, he's in debt." A woman turned to her friend, and meanwhile, Martin still managed to throw a lavish $47,000 party. It seemed unbelievable. Martin stumbled away from the stage, reaching for Tessa's hand. She jerked it back, nearly shouting, "Do you really think I'm crazy enough to stay with someone drowning in debt?" Near the stage, Lorraine stood abruptly, her face red and her hands trembling. "What? Bank loans!" she yelled, her voice breaking. "What have you done to my life, Martin?" The phone whipped toward her, catching the full impact of her mother collapsing, her son looking stunned, and her young lover shrinking as her facade was ripped away. Lorraine sank back down, clutching her head and whispering to herself, "I mortgaged the house to pay your legal fees, and now it's all gone." No one dared to move closer. They merely watched as if they were witnessing a play they never imagined they would see. Some people had already started posting online. I could hear the tapping of keyboards and someone reading out captions. One read, Number Silver Night Trader. The Willards Trader in a Silver Night. 25 years of marriage ending in a financial and affair scandal. Within minutes, I knew that hashtag would be spreading all over the internet. Nothing is more ruthless than public opinion once it takes a side. And tonight, it had chosen the side of truth. Grayson Hale, the divorce lawyer, had disappeared. A hotel staff member hurried over to his table, visibly flustered. Mrs. Lorraine, the guest sitting there, left without paying his bill. Lorraine simply looked beyond words, unable to speak. A security guard approached, holding a radio, and spoke softly. M.S. Hughes. The man named Cole, who had left through the east lobby, got into a car and was not coming back. That's fine, I said quietly. Let him go. Sooner or later, the law will find him. The rear doors opened, and my boss, Victor Lang, stepped out. His stride was steady, but his face was tight with anger. He stopped in front of me and spoke with a rough but sincere voice. Catherine, are you all right? I smiled and nodded. I am, Victor. He took a deep breath. Let me say this clearly, no matter what. I am on your side. No one deserves this, especially someone with your strength. Thank you, I said. Honestly, tonight isn't just about an ending, it's about a release. Victor gently squeezed my shoulder, the warmth of respect in his eyes, then signaled a few colleagues to leave. I called a taxi. The driver was an older man, maybe 70, wearing a cap and a gentle smile. He opened the door with a small nod. Lovely night, ma'am. These elegant events always bring happiness to people. I slipped into the back seat, offering a gentle smile, my eyes fixed on the golden fragments of the Willard reflected in the window. Yes, I said softly. A lovely night, because it changed my life, he said, glancing at me through the rearview mirror with a gentle smile. Not many can say that with true peace in their voice, I responded quietly, and peace comes from knowing you've said enough. The car moved smoothly down Pennsylvania Avenue. I leaned back, watching the bright building fade into the distance. Inside, everything was still falling apart. Martin was trying to gather up the remaining pieces. I knew this because just before I left, I saw him kneel beside Tessa, his hand trembling as he touched her dress. Please don't go. I'll explain. I'll... But Tessa pushed him away, her eyes cold as steel. Explain what? You think I'm stupid? I won't take on your debt. I won't have my name linked to yours. And Martin, Catherine is the one truly worth respecting. I heard it clearly, echoing through the half-closed door. Martin stood there in shock, shoulders slumped, as Tessa turned and walked away. Lorraine was still sitting, hands on her head, her voice trembling. What have you done to my life? You've ruined the family's honor. No one replied. The staff had already begun clearing the ballroom. Tables, spoons, forks, and glasses clinked softly, like metal on a coffin lid. A group of younger guests passed by, talking openly. He truly tried to serve divorce papers during the anniversary celebration. Yes. And he was immediately told off. I recorded everything. It's definitely going viral. The hashtag Church Night Trader is already trending. Those words struck like the final blow to Martin's reputation. I rested my head against the window, watching the slow flow of traffic at night. In the reflection, my face no longer showed anger or bitterness. Only calm remained. I didn't see victory. I only saw that I was finally free. Free from a hollow marriage. Free from the empty shell of a CEO's wife. Free from the kind of love I had spent almost half my life trying to hold on to. I realized that once tonight ended, everything would change. The media might show up, social media might start talking, but I was no longer afraid. The only thing that mattered was that I hadn't allowed anyone else to rewrite my story but myself. The taxi stopped in front of my condo on Capitol Hill, the place that once represented our marriage, now a symbol of my independence. I paid the fare and thanked the driver. He looked at me for a moment and said, I don't know what happened inside, but you walked out like someone who's just defeated the whole world. I gave a small laugh. No, sir, I replied. I only defeated myself. He nodded and drove away, leaving me standing under the gentle glow of the amber street lamp. I looked up at my condo, the place where I had cried, laughed, and felt afraid. Now it was quiet, calm, as if waiting patiently for me to come back. Tonight marked the end of a chapter, silent and unaccompanied by the crowd or whispers. But for me, it wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a life that was free, strong, and no longer under anyone's control. Inside the Willard, far behind me, Martin, the man who once thought he was the one directing this play, was now just a failed actor in the tragedy he had written for himself. 3 months after the silver night at the Willard, I found myself in another place that was just as bright and eerily quiet. Courtroom 4 at the District of Columbia Courthouse. Instead of fancy lights and music, there was only the scent of paper, polished wood, and the steady tap of gavels, sounds that served no emotion, only truth and law. I sat at the petitioner's table with Brianna Patel, my college friend and now my lawyer, sitting beside me. Her hair was pulled back, eyes sharp, her voice steady. She looked more like a warrior than the woman who used to share late-night pizza with me before exams. Sitting across from us was Martin, wearing an old wrinkled suit. There was no confident smile, no sign of any authoritative presence. He sat quietly, his head slightly lowered, his gaze drifting as if he'd lost his way. In the seat behind him, Lorraine sat close, holding a tissue. No one was looking at them with admiration anymore. Judge Rebecca Yates, a woman with silver hair and a serious expression, looked from one side to the other. We are hearing the divorce case of Catherine Miller Cole and Martin Cole. Case number 2.25D1472. Have the parties agreed on the main terms? Brianna Rose spoke clearly. Your Honor, the petitioner, Mrs. Catherine Miller Cole, agrees to a no-fault divorce. However, we ask for a definite ruling on property and personal debts based on the financial evidence provided. The judge nodded. Very well. Let's begin with the property. Brianna opened her case file and took out a stamped packet from Whitman and Associates. Your Honor, this legal document from Whitman Law, dated 1999, confirms that the Capitol Hill condo was purchased entirely with funds transferred directly from the account of Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Catherine's parents. The condo was originally registered only in Mrs. Catherine's name. 2 months after their wedding, Mr. Martin's name was added as a co-owner, but not as a purchaser. According to D.C. Family Law, Section 2002, subsection 4, property gifted or inherited before marriage is considered separate property and is not subject to division in a divorce. She placed the paperwork on the bench. Judge Yates lifted it, checked the seal, and gave a slight nod. It was properly documented. Does the respondent object? Martin's attorney, a thin and hurried man with a rough voice, stood and tried to oppose. Your Honor, my client believes the condo was used jointly for 25 years. But the judge interrupted quickly. Shared use does not mean shared financial ownership. There is no evidence that Mr. Cole made significant contributions to the property's value. The court cannot consider it as marital property. Is there any proof that Mr. Cole invested in, renovated, or paid for substantial improvements? The lawyer hesitated. No, Your Honor, only routine living expenses. The court then acknowledged that the Capitol Hill condo belongs to Mrs. Catherine Miller Cole as her separate property. It will not be divided. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Martin looked down, his hands clenched as if grasping onto something that was slipping away. The judge continued. And the Virginia cabin and the Lexus? Brianna responded. Both were bought after the marriage with shared funds, so we agreed to divide them equally as required. Very well, said the judge. Any debts? Brianna opened her laptop and showed a detailed summary. Your Honor, 3 debts are listed on Mr. Talatit. Martin Cole's credit report shows $20,000 owed to Chase, $15,000 to Wells Fargo, and $8,000 to a quick credit company called Evercash. The total amount owed is $43,000. Based on the spending records, most of these funds were used for personal expenses, such as gifts, restaurant bills, hotel stays, and a $47,000 payment for an event at the Willard Hotel, none of which had my client's approval. The judge looked at Martin. Mr. Cole, do you confirm this? Martin swallowed hard, his voice rough. I may have overspent, he began, but the judge interrupted him. No, the court finds these are personal debts that were incurred on your own and not for the benefit of the family, Mr. Ristard. Martin's shoulders sank as Lorraine whispered behind him. He bowed his head, staying still, hands lightly clasped to keep calm. Brianna continued, Your Honor, we also submit a set of digital evidence, including screenshots of messages between Mr. Lorraine Cole, along with the invoices confirming the event expenses and the loans was present. She handed a USB drive to the clerk and added, These documents have been verified by a digital forensics expert. They prove that the money was used entirely for a relationship outside the marriage. The judge looked at a few images and shook her head. Incredible, she said with a calm but firm voice. A $47,000 divorce party, Mr. Cole. The court considers both the law and your behavior. You have broken both. Brianna lowered her head in thanks. She met his eyes. There were no words, only heartfelt gratitude. Martin still reached for one last hope. He stood up, his voice rough. Your Honor, I am unemployed. I lost my job after the incident. I am requesting temporary spousal support from Mrs. Catherine because she has greater assets. A ripple went through the courtroom. Brianna raised an eyebrow and responded immediately. Your Honor, my client was financially independent both before and after the marriage. Furthermore, under DC Family Law, Section 309, in order to receive support, the person requesting it must demonstrate financial dependence or significant contribution to the other person's career. Mr. Cole was not dependent and, in fact, misused Mrs. Catherine's assets without her permission. Because of this, the request was deemed without merit. The judge gently tapped the gavel. The support request was denied. Martin sank into his seat, covering his face with his hand. Lorraine turned away, closing her eyes tightly. After nearly 2 hours, Judge Rebecca Yates brought down the gavel. The District of Columbia officially dissolves the marriage of Catherine Miller Cole and Martin Cole, effective today. The court recognizes separate property as a legal matter. The cabin and vehicle are divided equally. All personal debts of Mr. Cole are his alone. The record will be made public. The announcement sounded clear and final, but to me, it felt like a bell signaling release. I squeezed Brianna's hand. She smiled, the kind of smile that understands every step taken over the past 3 months, every document, every email, every meeting that brought me to this moment. I whispered, You stayed focused. Not a single effort missed its mark. Not me, Brianna said. You're the one patient enough to see it through. That afternoon, the Washington Ledger published a brief story on the Society page. Silver anniversary upset. CEO Martin Cole loses his home and job after what's being called the most astonishing reversal of the year. Hundreds of comments followed. One read, Life moves quickly. Never underestimate a quiet woman. Another said, Catherine Miller should teach how to respond with the law. I smiled, not out of triumph, just relief. I took a screenshot of the article and filed it in a folder named Ending 2025. I closed my laptop and gazed out the window. Autumn in Washington stretched in shades of amber. I thought to myself, in the end, justice doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be steady and arrive at the right time. My story, a 25-year marriage ending in a courtroom, was not a tragedy. It served as a wake-up call. Even in silence, if we stand by the truth, the scales of justice will eventually tip in our favor. I once heard someone say that judgment doesn't always arrive like a thunderclap, but rather in the days that follow when honor, money, and pride slip away from a person like the last leaves of fall. For Martin, that moment had begun. Just 2 weeks after the hearing, a video of him being exposed at a Willard had already gone viral online. A guest posted it on a personal account with a simple caption, Husband announces divorce at an anniversary party, and wife responds with proof of assets, inheritance, and an affair. Within 48 hours, the clip had amassed over 4 million views. Entertainment pages shared it with sensational headlines such as Silver Night Scandal, the anniversary upset that stunned Washington. Under every post, thousands of viewers responded with laughter and mockery. A CEO who never took the time to study family law got what he deserved for dismissing the woman he had promised to love. Catherine Miller, a symbol of calm strength and clarity. I didn't watch it all. Once was enough to realize that every lie will eventually come to light. A few days later, I received a short email from my boss, Victor Lang, who had been there that night. Catherine, you should know the board voted unanimously to end Martin Cole's contract. No one wants the company associated with that kind of moral scandal. Rest assured, this isn't about you. He had lost his credibility on his own. I responded simply, "Thank you, Victor." That's fair enough. Then I deleted the message without saying another word. No satisfaction, no gloating, just a sense of closing an old chapter. In the months afterward, I heard bits and pieces from former friends. Martin had tried to find work at a few small financial firms around Arlington, but no one would hire him. Rumors spread faster than resumes about the man who threw a $47,000 party to divorce his wife. No one wanted to be associated with that name. A few weeks later, he began working as a taxi driver. Someone I knew saw him standing beside a silver Toyota Camry at Union Station, waiting for fares. Worn out shirt, loosened tie, a gaunt face with hollow eyes, nothing like the executive who once strode across the polished floor of the Willard Hotel with a microphone in his hand. When I heard, I chose to stay silent. There is no victory worth celebrating when the person responsible was once part of your life. Still, there is justice, and justice does not require an audience. Lorraine, the woman who once boasted, "My son has everything under control," had now tasted the results of the plan she helped set in motion. I heard she had to sell her townhouse in Alexandria to pay off the mortgage she had taken out for legal fees and credit debts. She moved into a small one-room apartment in the suburbs of Falls Church, far from the city center, where rent was lower, but buses came infrequently. A former neighbor still tended to her orchids each morning on her porch, but her face appeared distant, her eyes like someone who still couldn't accept that the bright dream had turned to dust. As for Tessa, the woman who believed money could restore her honor, she vanished for a time after the scandal. By the fourth month, new photos appeared online. She was dressed in a white wedding gown, smiling beside a salt and pepper haired man. The caption was simple: "New life, new chapter." Her new husband owned a chain of upscale restaurants in Virginia Beach, almost 20 years older, but wealthy and widely known. The picture spread quickly. Someone sent it to me with a note. "Looks like she truly found her new chapter." I looked at it briefly and then deleted it. All I felt was exhaustion. If Tessa believes she has won, let her. Sometimes emptiness is the biggest failure, one you don't notice at first. Martin must have seen that photo. I knew because one evening I received a message from an unfamiliar number. I saw her picture. "You won, Catherine." Everything slipped out of my hands. I read it, then placed the phone on the table. I didn't reply. An hour later, a second message arrived. "I just want to meet to say I'm sorry. Just once at the old spot." I looked at that message the way you might gaze at an empty seashell. The object that once contained a sound now felt hollow. I didn't respond and didn't block him immediately. I left it there because sometimes silence is the strongest punishment. The next morning, I blocked the number, changed my email address, and set filters to block his name on every platform. I called Brianna and kept it brief. "You once taught me that a boundary isn't a wall. It's a door locked from the inside. Today, I locked it." Brianna laughed softly over the phone, and I believe you'll never open it again. A few weeks later, late in the afternoon, I used an app to order a car to take me to the office building so I could sign my early retirement papers. When the screen displayed the driver's name, I suddenly froze. Martin C., a silver Camry, with a familiar license plate. The photo was his face, thinner and older than I remembered. Just for a moment I hesitated, then I pressed cancel. A prompt appeared asking, "Are you sure you want to cancel?" I tapped yes without a second thought. Some rides aren't worth risking starting again, even if only 15 minutes away. From that day on, I turned my attention to moving to Miami. The condo I once considered my plan B was now truly the beginning of something new. I spent the next month taking care of paperwork, hiring movers, and donating most of my clothes and belongings to charity. The Capitol Hill condo felt too large now, too filled with memories. I didn't want to hear the sound of footsteps echoing down the hall anymore. One morning, As a gentle May breeze drifted through the window, I stood alone in the empty living room and watched sunlight spill onto the bare wall where my wedding photo once hung. I carefully took down the last frame, wiped away the dust, and felt a quiet smile. I no longer harbored regrets about the 25 years, about the man who had fallen out of my life, and even about the wounds, for they had taught me to stand strong when it mattered most. When I left that day, I carried only a single suitcase and a folder with my financial papers. As the plane left Washington, D.C., I gazed out the window. The city below was shrinking, its familiar buildings fading into distant points of light. At that moment, I realized I was not just leaving a place, but part of my life behind. When the plane touched down in Miami, the warm sun and the scent of the sea seemed to flow right into me. I stepped out into the bright, clear sky, lifted my face, and took a deep breath. It was a different sky, a sky of freedom. A new chapter was beginning, unfolding right before me. I thought, if anyone asked me about Martin, Lorraine, or Tessa, I'll just smile. We all get the ending we deserve. Then I moved forward, leaving the past behind and opening my heart to a new beginning. Light as a gentle sea breeze and as bright as the first sunrise after a storm. That moment when I truly felt reborn was that first morning in Miami. When I opened the balcony door, a warm wind flowed in, carrying the salty scent of the sea and the smell of white plumeria through the hall. Sunlight flooded the living room, casting a soft golden light on the walls. Below, small waves caressed the sand, and far away, the horizon shone like a silver mirror. I stood quietly for a long while, listening to the waves and seabirds, feeling something shift inside me. Relief and pride filled my heart all at once. I had arrived at the place I had only dared to call a backup plan 3 months earlier. Now it was the foundation of my new life. The new condo is on the 14th floor, facing the ocean. Inside, it's simple but filled with light. I chose everything myself: a white linen sofa, oak bookshelves, and a desk turned away from the window. When I look up, I see the sea. I didn't buy a television because I want to listen to real life, the sound of the waves, people practicing yoga on the sand, and the ring of bike bells as tourists pass by. When I first moved in, I had only two suitcases, one with my clothes, the other with documents, and my laptop. I opened the laptop and sent a brief email to Victor Lang. Sir, I am formally resigning. Thank you for the respect and support you have shown me during the hardest times. I am leaving not because I am tired, but because I want to find happiness and work on my own terms. Less than an hour later, he responded, Catherine, I understand and I am happy for you. Not many people begin again at 55, but you are different. You're not running away, you're moving forward. Congratulations and thank you for 25 years of service. I read his message and smiled. A chapter had ended, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. I spent a week organizing my finances. The inheritance from Zurich was deposited into my personal account, evenly divided. Half went into a secure savings account, while the other half was set aside for an old dream I had nurtured for over 20 years and starting a small publishing house. When I shared this with Brianna, she laughed, thinking I was joking. You want to publish? Yes, I replied, not to seek fame, but to translate and reprint beautiful books that Americans have forgotten, European classics, thoughtfully translated. I want to keep those works alive. Brianna fell silent for a moment, then softly said, Catherine, that's not just a dream. It's a way to heal. 3 months later, Silver House Publishing, the name I chose, was officially registered. I rented a modest office on Collins Avenue, just a few blocks from the ocean. Inside, the walls were painted white and shelves displayed the first proof copies. I employed 5 young editors, 3 women and 2 men, each with hopeful expressions and the same passion I had when I finished school. At our first meeting, I said, Jos, we don't need to be a large company. What matters is honesty in our words, respect for the authors, and kindness to the readers. If each published book is kept and not discarded, it shows we did our work right. All 5 of us clapped. A young woman with soft purple hair said, listening to you, I feel more at ease. No one talks about decency in this industry anymore. I smiled gently and replied, in that case, we'll be the first. On the day I signed our first licensing agreement, my hand was trembling as I held the pen. It was an English translation of Leopold Etrewight, a French novel I studied in college. When I saw the red stamp and the ISBN on the cover, my eyes pricked with tears. I once believed I was just a woman trying to survive with nothing left to start over. But deep inside, the part of me that loves words and the subtleties of language had never died. I took a photo of the first cover and sent it to Brianna and Paige. Paige responded almost immediately. You know, you look different. Brighter, lighter, as if the wind had swept away the heaviness. What was it that held you back? I chuckled reading it, then snapped a photo of the beach after work, the late sun turning the water into gold. Along with it, I wrote, Paige, maybe it's because the only thing I'm now afraid of losing is myself. One evening, Brianna came to Miami for work and stopped by. We sat on the balcony with glasses of white wine. The wind carried salty air, waves mixed with music from a nearby bar. Brianna gazed at me for a moment and said, You know, Catherine, I once thought your revenge was too clever, too gentle. But now I understand. You didn't take revenge. You saved yourself. I stayed silent, then smiled. Yes, because revenge keeps you trapped in the past. Saving yourself allows you to move forward. Brianna raised her glass and touched mine with hers. The sound was like a thin piece of glass, clear and sharp enough to bring tears to my eyes. Life began to find a new rhythm. Every morning, I woke at 6 a.m. and walked along the beach in my old sneakers. Waves gently lapped against the sand, cold yet soothing. Seniors practiced Tai Chi nearby. Children laughed happily as they chased their kites. Every breath I took carried the scent of salt, and each step moved me further away from the darkness of the past. When the sun lifted off the water, I told myself, no more fear, no more pretending to be at peace. Inside, I felt a quiet joy, like the knowing of every note in a song without words. One Saturday morning, as I returned home, the building manager called out, Mrs. Catherine, you have a letter. I was surprised. Few people write by hand anymore. A beige envelope with slanted handwriting caught my eye. I immediately recognized the sender's name in the corner, Martin Cole. I held the letter in my hand for a long moment, anticipating either apologies or late regrets. I knew what was inside before I opened it, so I didn't need to hear it. Instead, I opened a drawer, took out a freshly printed book, and carefully slipped the letter between two pages, unread. I closed the book gently and placed it back on the shelf. That letter would stay there as a reminder, not just to recall, but to show me I had been through it all. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony with the wind playing in my hair, holding a mug of black coffee. The sea stretched out endlessly, sunlight shimmering in 1,000 silver streaks. Children's laughter drifted from the sand, and gulls soared over the rooftops. In the distance, the sun leaned toward the horizon like a gentle blessing. I raised my cup and thought to myself, freedom tastes salty like the sea, but sweet like forgiveness. Then I took a sip, took a deep breath, and felt the wind softly touch my skin, while the sun warmed my eyelids. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in 25 years, I don't need to try and predict it. I only need to live, really live. When evening came, I cracked open the window and listened to the constant sound of the surf, gentle as a lullaby from a city that had opened its arms to me, whispering, Welcome home, Catherine. In December, I returned to DC. After nearly a year away, the city looked the same. Only I had changed. I was no longer the woman with her head bowed in the Willards ballroom. I was Catherine, who had learned to stand on her own. The trip took just 3 days, long enough to finish what I had left undone. I signed away my remaining share of the Virginia cabin, and I felt no regret. That place had once symbolized my years of marriage, but now it was simply a door to close, so another could open. After leaving the notary's office, I stopped by Mr. Whitman's. He was the elderly lawyer who helped me find my first legal protection. He greeted me with a warm smile, his silver hair shining under the light. I hear you moved to Miami, he said, pouring a cup of tea. The ocean must suit you better than DC winters, right? I smiled and placed my first book on his desk. It had a turquoise cover with the words The Narrow Door, translated by Catherine Miller. I want you to have this, I said, Without you, I might have fallen before I could stand on my own. Begin again. He turned a few pages and smiled gently. You didn't stumble. You simply paused to find the right way forward. I hugged him goodbye. Sometimes gratitude doesn't require much, just a gentle squeeze of the hand to connect people with tender threads. That afternoon, I met Brianna at our familiar cafe near Lafayette Square. She was a few minutes late, still dressed sharply in a black suit, but her expression was softer. I'll transfer your legal fees, I said. Brianna raised an eyebrow. Don't joke, Catherine. Friends don't bill friends. If you want to thank me, buy me a slice of key lime pie in Miami next time. We both smiled. In that shared laughter, I understood that not everyone leaves when you stumble. Some stay right there, lift you up, and walk with you out of the darkness. Back in Miami, I wrote the foreword for Silver's first collection, Truth Always Wins. It just needs time to reach people. And when it does, it's not loud or showy. It simply exists, shining quietly. I read it over many times. It wasn't only for the readers, it was for me as well. I had lost everything to learn that sometimes justice requires patience and silence. A morning came when my phone rang with an unknown number from the DC area. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Lorraine's voice sounded faint and weak. Catherine, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I was wrong. I was blind. I thought I was protecting my son, but I was damaging him instead. Thank you for not making us your enemies. I paused for a few seconds before speaking softly, one word at a time. You don't need to apologize. I forgive you, but I'm not going back. A silence followed on the line, only the wind. I could tell she was crying, but strangely, I felt no resentment, only compassion for both of us. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about allowing your heart to find peace. That night in Miami was quietly calm. Music from the bar across the street blended with the gentle sounds of the ocean. I sat on the balcony, my glass of wine catching the warm glow of the evening light. No longer feeling anger towards anyone or holding resentment for anything, I experienced a deep sense of peace that did not come from wealth or prestige, but from the certainty that I had lived in the right way. About a month later, I was asked to share my story at a small gathering for a women's reading group. There were around 20 people, mostly middle-aged women, seated around a table, lit by a candle. I shared my story not as a prepared speech, but as a letter to those who had been hurt. Near the end, a woman with silver hair stood up, her voice trembling. Miss Catherine asked softly, "Do you regret those 25 years?" I smiled and looked around the cozy room. "No," I replied, "because I learned my worth." "And that is more valuable than anything else," she said tearfully. She moved closer, took my hand, and whispered, "Thank you for speaking for us." At that moment, I realized my story was not just about my own ending, but also a new beginning for those who need hope and faith to stand tall. When everyone had gone, I stepped outside onto the balcony and looked out at the ocean. The night sea sparkled like countless shards of glass, reflecting the moonlight. I thought each wave was a fresh start, arriving, breaking apart, and then fading away, but never truly disappearing. I whispered to myself, "Catherine Miller, you have come full circle back to who you are." As the sea breeze brushed through my hair, I felt there was nothing more I needed to prove. If my story resonated with you, please share where you are listening from. I genuinely want to know if anyone out there has faced the same crossroads of pain and liberation as I did. Leave a comment and tell me what you might do in my place. Would you stay silent or speak up? And if you wish to continue exploring stories about self-respect, justice, and faith later in life, please consider subscribing, liking, or sharing. It helps me know you are walking this road with me. A small gesture from you encourages me greatly to share more stories, not just mine, but for everyone who has had to learn how to love themselves all over again. Thank you for staying until the very end to listen, to understand, and to believe that each ending is simply the start of something new.